Friends, my name's Aaron Ciotti. Sorry for the awkward end of the intro there, but you'll live, as will we all. What's up? It's Sunday Q&A time. That was flight footage from the 2S 75mm Walksnail rig. Let's see if the propellers are staying down in the motors. Good. That one moved down a little bit. Luis Torres, thanks for subscribing. That one's fine. That one's popping up a little bit. The 2S 75mm Walksnail rig makes just enough power where the propellers will start to kind of creep their way up and off the 1.5mm motor shaft. So keep an eye on that, or just do my trick to make the propellers a little bit tighter, which is where you take your really sharp-tipped tweezers that you don't like a lot because you're going to ruin the tips of them. So your old sharp-tipped tweezers that you've already ruined, take them, and then if this is the hole of the propeller, I'm not going to do it the sharp side because I'm going to stab myself. You put it in there at a 45-degree angle, and you scrape it around. What you're trying to do is take that plastic and dig into it so that you dig down, but then see my knuckles? See how my knuckles go up? That's what happens. You dig down, and then the plastic pushes up, so it becomes tighter here. So you go into the top, and you scrape it all the way around, 360, and then you go into the bottom and scrape it all the way around. And that's going to raise 4 edges on the inside of the propeller, and that's going to make it fit a little bit tighter on the propeller shaft. Yeah, with 2S on 1002s at Mega KV, we're starting to make a bunch of thrust, and that thrust is trying to pull these propellers up off the motor shaft. So, yeah, that's an easy fix for that. I have not done that yet on these propellers. I got a bunch of flight footage that we're going to play from this thing today. I've also got a bunch of flight footage, not a bunch. I've got 2 batteries worth of flight footage from the 1S version of it that we're going to play as well. And we'll compare the two of them, 1S versus 2S, talk about it, take a look at runtime, all the good things. I've also got some flight footage from the, not this one, but the version of this that has the Batwing camera mount that I use for chasing the RC drift cars. I flew probably about 15 batteries on Thursday. And so, yeah, at some point I'll just let that footage play and you can get a feel for Walksnail on a 65mm rig. In a super, super, super challenging environment. Chasing those little RC drift cars is incredibly difficult. They change directions very fast. There's a million things to hit, and I'm trying to fly it like on the ground, right? Like the little RC drift cars are only this tall, and I'm trying to get the camera on their door. So yeah, it's a hell of a test of any Cinewhoop. And when you put Walksnail into a Cinewhoop, it gets a lot heavier. You're adding like 35-40% extra. I guess not that much. I guess not that much. The rig. Let's look at exactly how much. Because I've got analog versions of it, so we'll look at the exact weight difference. I haven't weighed one of the analog RC drift chasing rigs in a minute. Let me actually weigh all three of these, see what the weight difference is. I'm continuing to do motor testing on these. And so I've got 3 of them built right now, which is excessive, but hey. If you're going to do it, do it. 18.4 grams. 18.5 grams. Good, I was hoping these would be close. 18.7 grams. Why are you so fat? Huh. They all have 0702s. Ah, because of the extra long battery leads. This is an AIO that... This was the AIO that I had put into the second Jungle Gym Basher. So the battery leads are extra long. You see them like looped up. They're so long that I have to loop them up there. I'd made these extra long for the 75mm rig for the bigger, longer batteries. And I just haven't shortened it up quite yet. So that's why this one is heavier. So, yeah. 18.5-ish grams analog, and then Walksnail, oh, wow, 24.4. So yeah, there's your extra 6 grams. Adding Walksnail, as long as you go to a lighter weight AIO, which you should, because you don't have to have a VTX built into the AIO, you end up adding 6 extra grams is the weight penalty of putting Walksnail on there. And with rigs that only weigh 18 grams, right? 6, 12, 18. It's 30%. You're adding 30% extra weight. Think about if you did that to a 5-inch rig. Well, that's an easy thing to think of because that's the difference between pulling a HD camera on and off, isn't it? How's that math work out? GoPro Hero is 120 grams. Multiply that by 3. And it's 360. Dry weight on most. These are weights without battery. You know, I don't even know what the dry weight is on an average 5-inch rig. I always weigh them with battery or with HD cam. 427, and this is a pretty heavy kind of rig. So yeah, it's in the ballpark. So it's equivalent to pulling the. Why are you doing that? Stand up there, you jerk. There it goes. So yeah, it's the equivalent to pulling the HD cam off of a 5-inch rig. And boy, do they fly different when you're doing that. You know what I mean? When you do that, I should say. So yeah, it's it makes it fly way different, but as you'll see in a little while, you can still move it around pretty good, and you can still get some really cool shots with it if you're willing to put hundreds and hundreds of batteries in. Chasing the RC drift cars is something that took me a long time to get good at. I've got the very first, if you want to see what that learning curve looks like, the very first edit here on the channel of me chasing the RC drift cars was after like 2 or 3 months of doing it. So we're probably talking 200 to 300 batteries worth. And then the most recent edit is after about a year. And so you can kind of see the progression there. Super difficult, but super rewarding, incredibly fun. RC drift cars are a much more popular hobby than FPV, which means that somewhere near you there is a group of people that are doing that. Look them up. Go chase them around. You will absolutely love it. It is one of the most fun things to do in FPV. It has not completely, but it has like brought my love of FPV back. Doing this as a job and doing this for 8 years, you know, you do the same thing that much time, and it's like, all right, is there something else in the world that I can do here? This is something that's really got me just as excited as I ever was to fly, and that's hard to do after that much time, you know. So especially if you're starting to like plateau and or start to feel some burnout, for sure do this. But even if you're not, just go do it, because it's an amazing amount of fun. Counting FPV was first in the chat. Notice was next. FPV Toast, BAD, Doubles FPV, Tony Morgan, Apache Smoke Wounded Sniper, Andrew Taylor, Notice again. We Bleed FPV, what's up, Zotek, how are you? Kilo Zebra, Frank Nicholas, King FPV, Perside, Bob Bruce, Dre the Drone Guy, nice. Slow Cal's in the house, what's up, homie? Parkour Guy, Morton Upshot, Luis Torres, Gusto, Crom, Oback, Nasty, Freelojo, Striker, Prop Breaker, Adam Weston, Spencer. What's up, everybody? Morton Upshot, CMYK FPV, Verbalance. I think I got everybody. Thanks for coming. CiottiFPV.com is the website that you can support me. If you don't support me, I'm going to die. There's a million different ways that you can help a brother out. Patreon definitely helps me out the most, and you can join for as little as 10 cents a day. If you're in FPV, I know you've got an extra 10 cents a day. Here's the cheat code. By supporting me, at some point, I will tell you to not buy something, and you will save 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 or $300, and then that 10 cents a day doesn't seem like a lot of money now, does it? So head on over, join the Patreon, click some affiliate links, buy something from my Etsy store, work one-on-one with me through Fiverr, or just message me and we can schedule it. Buy yourself a t-shirt from Teespring. Look at all these affiliate links, yo. These are free. You should be using affiliate links on every single order that you do on the internet, because content creators can create better content if they have more money. And this is free money. Amazon, Get FPV, Pyrodrone, Race Day Quads, Newbie Drone, WeBleed, FPV Cycle, Oh My God, Brain 3D, HD0, Flywoo, Emax, Banggood, and Camera Butter. If you're ever doing orders on those websites and you have changed your bookmark to my affiliate link, or if you've changed your URL bar suggestions to my affiliate link, so that you don't even have to worry about like remembering, I will get 1 to 6% of your total shopping cart. And if a bunch of you do that, it really adds up. And like I said, it's free money. It doesn't affect anybody in any way. Do it, my friends. If you don't use my affiliate links, use somebody's, because yeah, we rely on you. Apache Smoke Wounded Cyber says, what's up, CiottiFPV and Gang the Gang? How are you all doing? Massive, massive, massive shout out to Apache Smoke Wounded Sniper. He is who is doing 99% of the timestamps on these live streams moving forward. Every time he watches one of these live streams after the fact, he's probably doing it right now, he's jotting down time codes or typing in time codes, and then after the stream he drops a comment with all of them. I copy and paste them into the description, and then it's way easier to search my channel to find all the juicy good info. So yeah, huge thank you, Apache. It's just amazing that you continue to do that. It's this whole community is super lucky because you're willing to put that effort in. Bob Bruce says, got to fly around some burned out cars this weekend. It was pretty fun. That's very cool. Yeah, having like flying around cool subjects rather than just like parking lot with trees is so, it really changes it, and it's super, super, super fun. Freelojo putting the CiottiFPV.com link into the chat. Striker says, yo. Crom says, so 1003 22,000 kV on 2-inch props were too much for the Cross AIO. Turns out they can pull up to 18 amps. So the Cross AIO has 5 amp FETs on it. 18 amps should be okay. What I'm guessing is that it went way over 18 amps but it blew up, and then that shut the board. It blew up, and then it didn't report that higher amp number. 5 amps per channel, 20 amps total. That's the continuous amp rating. The burst amp rating on a 5 amp FET is going to be like 6 or 6.5 amps. So now you're up to 24 amps total. But yeah, I'm not surprised that 1002. Oh wait, you're on 1S, huh? 1003, 22,000 kV on 2-inch props, but on 1S. I'm actually surprised that blew up. I've done that combo. Not on 2-inch props though. I did it, but I did do it on 1.6-inch tri-blade props. Were you on 2-inch tri-blade props, Crom, or were you on those Gemfan 2-inch biblades? Interesting. I'm super surprised that we haven't blown up more of these Cinewhoop AIOs, because we are starting to put motors on these things that really do hammer. It kind of makes sense though. Like, we talk a lot about how the amp ratings are completely out of control and totally unnecessary on a lot of gear. So yeah, well, we had to hit that point anyway. I'm going to be doing 1003s on a 2-inch open propeller build at some point here. I just gotta get the frame in and figure out what the hell I'm doing. But yeah, stay tuned for that. Dave S says, what are the best props for the stock Modulus 6 with 19,000 kV motors? I'm learning and need some replacements soon. There kind of aren't any. 19,000 kV is just not enough. It's so low of a kV that there's not a pitchy enough propeller that is lightweight enough. The weight of the propellers need to be light enough so that the stator volume of the motor can spin them up and slow them down quick enough for good response time, for good flight performance. So when you have a motor that's too low of a kV, and then the motor is small, like an 802, because the kV is so low, what you want to do is keep adding more pitch and keep adding more blades. But what happens very quickly with Cinewhoop props is that when you do that, the propellers get so heavy that the response time starts to suck. So you don't really even get that much extra thrust, and you wreck the flight performance. So yeah, those motors are just kind of cursed, if I'm totally honest. The best you're gonna do is the Gemfan 1219S propellers, because they're lightweight enough, but then they're pitchy and they're tri-blade. There's also the HQ new ultralight tri-blades, which I call the YOLO props because they're so fragile that you really only live once with them before they're all bent up. Those are not as pitchy as the Gemfan props, though, so it doesn't really make much sense to put those on. But those are those two propellers, and then the Gemfan biblades, the 1210 biblades. Those are really the only 3 propellers that are light enough for an 0702 or an 0802 motor to have a really quick enough response time where you get good flight performance. You don't get yaw washout, you don't get bounce back, you don't get prop wash, all that stuff. All of the other 3 blades and then pretty much all of the quad blades are just too heavy of a propeller. And also, like, the motor doesn't even seem to really have enough stator volume to push those extra heavy, extra draggy props to make that extra thrust. So yeah, Dave, unfortunately for you to get better flight performance, you've got to spend $40 instead of $4. $40 as in a new set of motors. If you've got a Modulus 6, the easy button is 0702 30,000 plus kV. At the moment, I don't quote me on this, but I don't think Cinewhoop has any of those motors in stock. Weebleed does, though. Over on Weebleed FPV, there are 0702 32,500 and 40,000 kV motors. 40,000 is a bit much. Yes, you can just motor limit them down, but you have to motor limit them down an awful lot for most pilots to be able to control them. So the 32,500s are probably a better bet for you. It is a brilliant motor. It is going to make loads more power than what you've got now. And like for your first probably 2 years of flying, that is going to be plenty of power for you. If you're really, 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 really good, you might be able to handle the 40,000s. But you're probably better off with the 32.5s. They're yeah, they make plenty of power. Striker says, what are your thoughts on 75 millimeters for front yard rippage and indoor? Maybe this entire live stream is going to be dedicated to that, but for indoor it doesn't really make sense. It's not going to be fun to fly. It's just going to be flyable, but you're not going to be able to really do anything because of how heavy it's going to be. But this whole live stream is dedicated to that, so just watch. CMYK says what's up. Weebleed says what's up. BAD says looked up and there's an RC Drift Club and 2 RC race clubs near me. All are happy for me to come fly, so I guess I just need to get good and go fly. Don't get good, just go fly. You'll get good from going and flying. It's a very specific like sort of discipline, chasing those guys around. So don't bother waiting, just go. It's also so difficult that you're going to get good faster chasing those guys around. And there's no negatives for them. Those RC drift cars are so heavy, and make sure that you tell them, hey, just hit me when I crash, that they don't, but you're not going to bother them at all. If you crash 100 times, which I do, I crash a lot, and they just come railing around and smack me and I go flying, and it's hysterical and everybody laughs. You'll get guys that are like, oh, sorry. And so like get into the habit when it happens of like laughing your ass off, and then they're going to like pick up on that, and then they'll start laughing with you. You can also just like say to them, like, especially if somebody apologizes, be like, no, don't worry. You're not going to hurt it. It's all good. And it just becomes like a joke. Like when I go, it's like I think they aim for me at this point, which I want. Like they're not going to hurt us, and if they do, like whatever, it's a tiny whoop, and it's like an ongoing joke. Like when they smack into me, everybody there's like oh, like I start laughing, everybody starts laughing. It's super fun. So yeah, just go. Here's what I will tell you though: figure out your throttle expo. For anybody that's going to go do this, if you do not have throttle, if you're not using throttle expo, you are just going to elevation bounce all the time, the entire time, and it's going to make your life so much more difficult. Go to my channel, search for look, come in here, see this little, am I not subscribed to my own channel? That's funny. Click this little magnifying glass here. You can do this on anybody's channel. Click this little magnifying glass and search for Throttle Expo. That's going to find Midpoint Monday. Dialing in Throttle Expo, the secret for throttle control. There's like a half an hour run in here. Is it in here? I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's this one. It's this one. We also talk about it here. I talk about it a lot, but it's in here. Spend the half an hour. Watch it. At the end of that half an hour, you will understand how to set Throttle Expo, why to set Throttle Expo, when to adjust Throttle Expo, and that is 100% the cheat code. And to be honest, totally like a necessity to be able to fly really low to the ground and chase these little guys to get the really cool camera angles that you want to get. So make sure that you've done that. And also make sure that you understand how to adjust it, because when you get there, you're going to have to adjust it. Throttle Expo is dependent heavily upon the midpoint, and the midpoint that you run is totally dependent upon how fast you're going to be cruising. When you fly around the house, you're not going to be flying at the exact same speed as when you chase these little RC drift cars. And so you need to understand this, because when you go start chasing them, if your throttle expo is not absolutely perfect, you need to land and change the value. It's super simple. You put your throttle value in your OSD, and then you go and you chase them around, and you keep glancing over at it. And you glance over and you glance over, and every time you glance over, you'll see what percent throttle you're at. So it's going to be like this. You're going to be chasing them around, and every time you glance, it's going to be like 30, 28, 31, 28, 30, 30, 27, 32, 30, 28, and you're going to come up with an average, right? What I just did, the average was 30, right? We were a little bit above, we were a little bit below, and so your midpoint needs to be at 30 for that specific venue, whatever. Also, you're going to have drivers that are better and drivers that are worse, and the better drivers are going to go faster. And so if you've got like a group out there and you're chasing better drivers and your throttle expo doesn't feel quite right, same deal. Glance over at it and you'll notice 32, 34, 35, 33, 35, 36. Now you need to change that midpoint again. If you run a lot of throttle expo like I do, if you run like 40 or 50 in the amount fields, that midpoint needs to be perfect. If you run less throttle expo, you don't have to be as insane about that midpoint. But the move is to run a lot of throttle expo and to nail down that midpoint absolutely perfect. And then you can experiment. You can experiment with more throttle expo, with less throttle expo, but just always make sure that that midpoint is as dialed as possible. The more throttle expo that you run, the less of your throttle is going to be in sort of like this butter zone. The less throttle expo you run, the more you can vary your throttle. So if you've got a group of guys that run the same pace every single time, and if the racetrack is kind of like fairly open, this is the other thing that can happen. Sometimes they'll set up a track layout where there's a big long straight, but then there's a bunch of really technical tight corners. So in the technical tight corners, they'll be going slower and you'll be lower in the throttle, and then in the big straight, you'll be higher in the throttle. So depending on track design, you might need to vary the amount of throttle expo that you've got, or just deal with it. For me, I set the midpoint perfectly for the low speed stuff because that's way more difficult because they're changing directions a lot there. And then for the straight, I just hammer into the throttle and then flatten it out. And then because like if you just do a big burst of throttle, you can generate a bunch of momentum and then you can flatten yourself back out. And once you've flattened yourself back out and you're riding that momentum, you're going to bring your throttle back down into that butter zone. And then so you can basically just like on the last turn before, what I'll usually do is in the last turn before the straight, I'll be behind them and then I'll go ripping over their heads at full throttle. And then I'll ride this wave backwards and let them come towards me. It's really, really cool. And then I'm in that butter zone. I can drop down real low and then they'll close the gap, come in, then I let them come past me. And it's just like gorgeous when you get it right. So a couple different ways to do it, but watch that live stream, half an hour or so. It's time-stamped thanks to Apache Smoke, and you'll understand how it works, how to set it, all the good stuff. Cool. YouTube did the thing, scrolling back up. Adam Weston says, sorry, I haven't watched live lately. I got my goggles 2 back from you a few weeks ago, working great with my O3. Happy you at least got a little time with him. Yeah, thank you so much, Adam, for letting me borrow those. I wish I'd spent more time with them, but yeah, it's just chaos around here. Notice says, but because of CiottiFPV, I buy a lot of things. Don't buy too many things. Be responsible. Live your life. King FPV says, make sure it is CiottiFPV spec. Agreed. Just Mo says, thanks for telling me about the small motor holes in the light cockroach frames. Changed to a Meteor airframe. And the motor started spinning. Nice. I had a feeling that's what it was. Just get your drill bits out, yo. It's I think it's a 9/64 drill bit that you need to drill out those cockroach frames to give you a little bit more clearance for the bigger C clips that HappyModel uses. Crom says the Cross AIO blew up on turtle mode despite keeping it short. Interesting. Was there a propeller that was blocked? You got to be really careful of that. Blocked propellers are really hard on ESC FETs in turtle mode. So always, 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 when you go into turtle mode, this is actually really important, friends. When you go into turtle mode, none of this full stick immediately bullshit. When you're in turtle mode, real gentle, and just like if you want to fire up the right motors, gentle, and see if the motors spin. If you do this and the quad doesn't move at all, those motors are blocked. Don't push it any farther. Try the other side. Or just what I do is I try diagonals. I really quickly go very lightly in the diagonals, and you'll see which ones are blocked and which ones aren't. And then once there's one that's not blocked, then you can bash it full throttle and flip the rig back over. There's no reason to blow FETs up turtle moding. Don't be so insane about it. Just quickly touch them a little bit, make sure that the props are free, and then let her rip. Z Bluga says, hey man, what's up guys? Danzilla Terrible says, hey oh. Grey Hat says, what do you think of Xing nano motors in general? I have a bunch of 0802s lying around, thinking about doing a build. They're great, they're heavy, but yeah, in general, Xing motors are durable but heavy. I don't know, I doubt that the little tiny Xing motors are any more durable. But they are a little bit heavier. But they're fine. If you have them, run them, and then eventually you'll get antsy and buy another set, and you can test them head-to-head, and maybe you'll feel a difference. Christopher Conright says, for a 3.5-inch build, would you choose Xnova 1804 or iFlight Xing 1504 3100 kV, both the same kV? I would definitely not choose 3100 kV. You're going to want more than that. Minimum 3500 kV. I don't have quite enough info to go off of. I don't know what kind of a 3.5-inch build this is. I don't know if it's like a school bus style heavy. I don't know if it's a toothpick, super lightweight. Where are you, for the record, where are you seeing iFlight Xing 1504s? Those were discontinued eons ago. Who still has those? AliExpress still have them? I think you might be looking at a motor that's sold out. Okay, apparently AliExpress doesn't work. Because, yeah, I was desperate for those motors because they make them in 3900 kV. And at the time, that was kind of the most power and the highest kV that we could get. I'll be damned. Oh my god, they have 329 available. Here's the problem though, 3100 kV is not enough for 4S, and then 6S on a micro is really hard on the ESCs, and it has barely any benefit. So, yeah, I don't recommend 3100 kV. Do they have the 39s? Oh, it looks like they discontinued the 3900 kV. What a dumbass thing to do. These 3100 kV motors don't make any sense on anything. It's kind of too high of a kV for 6S, not that, but yeah, 6S on micros is pointless. So yeah. Hold on. I didn't realize that. I thought they discontinued. I mean, they may as well have discontinued the entire motor. But yeah, that's interesting. I guess they only discontinued the 3900s. What a shame. Huh, that's sad. To realize that they discontinued the version of the motor that's actually useful. The 1804... Yeah, see, it really depends. I can't make that decision without knowing a lot more. All I can say is the 1804 would only really make sense if your build is going to be like 350 to 400 grams. 300 to 400 grams, let's say that. The 1504 is going to be more for like a 200 to 300 gram build, but again, 3100 kV is not going to be enough. So yeah, at the moment, what are the 1604s? Oh god. Oh, there we go. Thank you for fixing it. The T motor, here you go. This is a much better bet. This motor in 3800 kV is awesome. It's a shame that this is back ordered, but yeah, this 1604 and 3800 kV is what I would go for on a build that's anywhere from like 250 to 350 grams. Really, really, really good choice. And then if you're below 250, the T-Motor 1404 4600 kV is hands down the right motor. If you're from 250 to 300, yeah, this 1604 is the jam. If you're above 300, then you can go up to the X-Nova 3500 kV. Get it in T-mount. Sorry, not T-mount. M5 mount. And then you can run the T-Motor 3140 propellers. You're on a 3.5-inch rig. I would still run those propellers because they're really strong. So yeah, there you go. Bunch of different options for you. Notice says, easy button, why always 0702 and not 0802 for torque? Is it really about weight? 100%. Yep. The weight difference between the 0702s and the 0802s are night and day. And yeah, 702 high KV is just so much better for indoor flying than 802s. 802s are for outdoor flying, and you might as well put them on a 75mm rig at that point. So yeah. Gray Hat says, you ever build a 1S or 2S 75mm with two BT 2.0 series plugs and a motor limit on the 2S profile? Yeah, quite a few. A long time ago, actually. Going like 2 to 3 years back, I spent tons of time and effort building these, what I call tiny lifters, to carry initially the Insta360 Go 1, and now the Insta360 Go 2. And yeah, it's a really cool formula. Using the, back then we didn't really have any lightweight 2S batteries, so I had to do this. But it works really well. This is a really cool setup using the double BT 2.0. The problem is, how the hell do you mount the batteries? Newbie Drone, the Newbie Drone Cockroach 75 frame has this really, really cool battery mounting setup here, where down in here, where you can see the white and the blue, is a battery, and then up here is a battery as well. And so, yeah, on this one specific frame, there is a way, see that there? Little TPU things. There is a way to mount two of these batteries. I don't know of any other frame that has a mounting solution for the double battery setup. And I really try not to just do like the rubber band thing. It just kind of drives me insane. And so, yeah, it's a very cool setup. But what I will say is that this frame is not durable at all. The reason that I don't fly these tiny lifters very much is that if I crash them in that frame, probably like 25% of the time I break the frame. That Cockroach 75 frame is made of like a brittle plastic, and there's 4 standoffs to hook up to the vertical part of the duct, and they're really, really, really thin. And so, yeah, it's just kind of a fragile frame. I also just don't fly the Insta360 Go 2 very much. That build with this heavy-ass camera, it's fat. It's like it's 76 grams. So it flies like shit. Back then, it was unbelievable that we could do it. And I still do fly it every once in a while, but the reason that I named it Tiny Lifter is because it flies like, well, lifters don't fly like shit anymore, but they used to fly like shit. And it kind of flies like a lifter, where like the payload, the camera is so heavy, but then the rig is really small underneath it. And it's really prioritizing like just putting this camera up in the air at all costs. And so, yeah. It totally works. It's just a matter of storing the batteries somewhere. Grey Hat says, then you can run either 1S or 2S. Not really. You can't really motor limit it. I tried that. You can't really motor limit it. You can't run motors that are a high enough KV for 1S and then motor limit the, well, on this build, on this particular build, with a massive payload, there was not a motor that was a high enough KV to be usable 1S that I could then motor limit enough for 2S. You don't want to motor limit beyond like 65-70%. And so realistically, you would need to like motor limit it down to like 50%, right? which is too much. You start to lose throttle resolution, lose efficiency, yada yada yada. So yeah, it's a bit too much to ask to be able to have it sort of both ways, if that makes sense. But yeah, just deciding on a 2S build and then going that route with the double BT 2.0s totally works. Notice with a $5 super chat, 2 $5 super chats. Thank you so much, brother. He says, can you compare your OFT recommended iGal motors and Cinewhoop's Positronic 702 27,000 kV 1.5 millimeter shaft? And then don't forget to say mucho to your Latino friends. It means a lot to them. Does it really? Two totally different motors. The new Cinewhoop 1.5 millimeter shaft 702. I love that it exists. But 702s only work on 65 millimeter rigs. And 27,000 kV is just sort of barely. I mean, here's the deal: 1.5 millimeter motor shaft, 65 millimeter rig. There is only one propeller that exists. It is the Gemfan 1208, and that propeller is not. That's a little bit of an older propeller, and it doesn't perform nearly as good as the newer HQ YOLO Gemfan 1219S 1210 biblade propeller options. So that 702 27,000 kV motor with that propeller, what's really cool about that combo is it is going to be completely indestructible, because that motor shaft will never bend with the all-up weight of that rig. So you will have a 65 millimeter rig that you can just hammer the living hell out of, and you will never bend a motor shaft, and those propellers are acceptable. There's gonna be a huge performance difference, though, between that setup and what we commonly fly and build in our little community here, with the 32,000, 36,000, 40,000, even 30,000. The difference between 27 and 30,000 is real. And then the iGal motors, which are 802 27,000 1.5 millimeter motor shaft, those are not for 65 millimeter rigs. Those are for 75 mil rigs. That is really the motor of choice for the jungle gym basher for flying outside. So yeah, massive difference between 702 and 802. Putting that iGal motor onto a 65 millimeter rig, it's going to be so heavy, and that KV is too low. If you want to run an 802 on a 65 millimeter rig, you need to run the 33,000 kV motors. But you're still going to end up with a 65 mil rig that's really, really heavy, too heavy. It's totally flyable, and when I tested those motors, it was a riot. But it's very hard to fly because of how heavy it is. So unless like you're flying in a warehouse or something like that, I don't really recommend it. Even if you are flying in a warehouse, you're going to be better off with a 702 32,000 kV, 36,000 kV, or 40,000 kV if you want that extra power. 65 mil rigs need to be lightweight. That is really where they come alive. So yeah, great question, Notice. And thank you so much for the support, my man. Grey Hat says, there's an OSD element that tells you which way to push the stick in turtle mode. It points such that the motors that are higher off the ground will be activated. That's pretty cool. I can just see it, though, right? Like, you can just see which side it's, 75% of the time you can see it, right? It's either like this, or it's like this, or it's sitting like this, where the camera is looking sort of up. 25% of the time, the camera is just looking into the ground, and then you kind of know it anyway, right? I also don't always fire up the motors that are the highest. Sometimes those motors will be blocked, and the one that's closest to the ground is not. And sometimes even the one that's closest to the ground is the one that I want, because that gives it the extra bit of momentum to flip itself back over. So yeah, for me, it's just gently push in all four directions. You can do it really quickly, and then whichever one was actually spinning, fire that one up, and away you go. But that's cool. I didn't know that there was an OSD element that tells you that. That's pretty slick. Christopher Conwright says it is the AOS 3.5 Chris Rosser. I still don't know enough, Chris. I don't know if you're carrying an HD camera. I don't know what the components are. Let me put it this way. There's a link on my website to Fiverr. On Fiverr, there's a service called Build Planning. When someone links up with me to do build planning, I spend 15 to 20 minutes just hammering them with questions. What's the build going to be? What are the goals for the build? What HD camera are you picking up? What video system? Who's your favorite pilot? Where do you fly? How often do you fly? How often do you crash? What do you crash into? How important is durability to you? I have this big list of questions that I ask. The answers to all of those questions are the only way that I can make an accurate decision for you as to what's the perfect motor, what's the perfect prop, what's the perfect frame, perfect video system, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, these live streams are not the place to actually be able to figure that out. I would have to stop the whole live stream and just talk to you for probably a half an hour, because I would have to wait every single time for you to type the answer to me, right? So it's just a bad medium for like dialing in on that. And I try really hard to not just say like, hey, here's my favorite motor, you should all run it, because my favorite motor is my favorite because it fits my specific scenario perfectly. Every single one of you has a completely different scenario. You're a completely different pilot. You fly different spots. You have different favorite pilots. You're carrying different video payloads, right? HD camera or no HD camera. And so, yeah, this is sort of why I've chosen long form content, right? Live streams as my thing, is because what I would prefer is for you to leave me on in the background and learn. And eventually we talk about all this stuff and you will learn what the right motor is for each different specific scenario. That's the way to do it. Or pay me $40 or $60, half hour, and we can dive into that. And you know, I'll tell you a lot more than just the best motor. So yeah, that's sort of the deal. Everybody else will just randomly tell you a motor, and it's usually their favorite motor. And you know, maybe that'll be the right motor for you. Probably not, because there's a lot of different options. But yeah, it's a little bit different around here. But I think it's better to do it this way. I'm biased, but hey. Andrew Taylor says, what does school bus style frame mean? Yellow? No. They look like a school bus in that they've got a long, it's hard to see it with the battery strap here, but they've got a long center section like a school bus. Basically, you've got your flight stack, you've got your camera up front, and then you've got your communications package in the back, right? Receiver and VTX. And it ends up being long and skinny in the middle, like a school bus. I forget who I stole that from. I did not create that. I can't think of another. The only word I can think of is nomenclature, but that's such a obnoxious word. Koala says hello. Christopher Conwright says, unfortunately, all the 2 motors are out of stock, and the only one in stock is the newer ultralight. I'm guessing still too low of a KV. Pacer 1804, 3400. 3400 is a little bit better. Oh, well, no, that's the 1804. You don't necessarily want the 1804. If you're going to go 1804, you might as well go X Nova. Those are in stock at Pyrodrone, and they're 3500 kV. So, yeah, but you don't want the 1804. You want the 1604. And, yeah, the out-of-stock situation sucks balls. It sucks for me, too. Parkour Guy says, couldn't you bore out 1219s to be 1.5 millimeters, or would that screw up the balance? It would screw up the balance, but more importantly, it would... how do I not have one around here? It would weaken the hub to a point where... Oh my god. It would weaken the hub to a point where... So those GemFan 1219s use supports and then a center ring of plastic. If you drilled out that center ring of plastic, you might drill it all out. If you didn't drill all of it out, it would be so thin that it would just crack. So yeah, it's not a realistic thing to do. But the other problem is balance. If you're gonna try to drill 1 millimeter props out to 1.5 millimeters, you're almost certainly gonna make that propeller out of balance. If you're gonna do it, what you want to do is get a set of drill bits that have 1 millimeter, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. Even better, 1 millimeter, 1.05, 1.1, 1.15, 1.2, 1.25, and then you need to step it up. You can't skip. You need to go one, then the next, then the next, then the next, then the next. And what you end up with is a half an hour of drilling one set of propellers out. And then you go and you crash and you bend one of those propellers all up, or you lose one of those propellers and you go, fuck! And then you spend another 15 minutes drilling out one more propeller or two. It sucks. Drilling out propellers is bullshit. Everybody that's been into micros for 2 or 3 or 4 years has done it. And they all have the same story of like, I can't fucking do that shit. Nobody got time for that. If you rush it and you don't step it up like that, they're out of balance and they're worthless. If you step it up like that, you spend way too much time for propellers. And then what ends up happening is either you give up, which you should do, or you never crash that rig because you've got hours into the propellers and then you fly it real fucking careful and you don't do anything cool with it and you don't enjoy yourself and it just sucks. So yeah, don't do the drilling out propellers thing. It's a zero-sum game and you'll just end up quitting at the end of it anyway. Strager says I wouldn't recommend the Pacer 1804. Chris Rosser tested them. They're rated at 3400, but the actual KV is 3100. So I'd only consider them viable for 6S with like an 87% motor limit. Yeah, I mean, with an 1804 though, it is enough stator volume to put a big ass propeller on it, so you can actually get some power out of them. And there is more to motors than just power. Durability, the way that the throttle curve sort of is. But yeah, that sucks that they actually only are at 3100 kV. But yeah, there's still a place for that motor. 5-bladed propellers, for example, you can take a lower kV motor and make actual power from it. But yeah, it depends. Again, with Christopher's like theoretical build, it could be a Cinelifter for all I know. I have no idea. So that, yeah, there's too many variables. FPV Toast says I have a Mobula 6 2024. And I tried to swap it into 65 airframe, but the USB hits the battery and makes it fly away. Is there any way to make it work? Mobula 6 2024. What's a 65 airframe? Oh, Meteor 65 airframe. Well, you don't want to run that frame anyway. So, yeah, get rid of that frame. That frame with HappyModel motors is a nightmare. The Meteor 65 the Meteors, we talked about this on the stream 2 days ago. The Meteor 65 frame, the old school one, the Crown frame, Weebleed FPV Crown frame, and the Meteor 65 Air frame, they have all chosen to put, here's one right here. They've all chosen to put this part of the duct that you need the propeller to run around in higher. And the HappyModel motors are shorter motors. And so this frame, those 3 frames I just mentioned, combined with HappyModel motors, what happens is the propeller runs below this. And so every single time you crash, the propeller slams into these supports, which chews up the propeller and stalls the motor out, and you crash. So those 3 frames are only going to work well with the Beta FPV motors, which are taller, and the VCI motors, which are taller. HappyModel motors, you want to use the Cockroach 65 V3 frame or the Cockroach Light AF frame. They've put those ducts lower, which jive with the HappyModel motors. So get rid of that frame. It'll also fix the USB hitting the battery problem, and yeah, everything will be better. Parkour Guy says, would you ever not use an ND filter for cinematic shoots? All the time. such as indoor-only flights, or is the motion blur NDs give you pretty much a necessity? ND filters don't give you motion blur. ND filters reduce the amount of light that is going to hit the sensor. And so, depending on the amount of available light where you're flying, that is the main determining factor of whether or not you run an ND filter. The other determining factor is what shutter speed do you want to run, and what ISO do you want to run. And so, yeah, like most FPV videos talking about ND filters are FPV pilots that have no idea what, they don't have any experience in photography or videography. And there's this horrible, like easy button that people seem to believe in with ND filters just giving you more motion blur. And it's just not true. ND filters will only give you motion blur, if you've limited your ISO. If you have your ISO set to auto, as soon as you put that ND filter on, all it's going to actually do is make your video more noisy, because you're going to reduce the amount of light hitting the sensor, and then the ISO being on auto, the camera is going to go, well, fuck it, I'll run the ISO up to 1600 or 3200 or the max, and that looks like total ass. So there's a lot more that goes into it than that. The shoot that I did, all right, so I don't even have to talk about that one specifically. As you get bright and early in the morning, and then so sunrise and then sunset into blue hour, there's less available light. The sun has dropped really low, and everything becomes less bright. And you take your sunglasses off, right? And this is the easy button with ND filters. If you're about to shoot and you would like to be wearing sunglasses because it's really bright out, so would your camera. If you're about to shoot and it's early in the morning, sunrise, or it's sunset, or it's blue hour, or you're inside of a building and you don't want to be wearing sunglasses, neither does your camera. That's going to work 90% of the time. There are the other 10% is like scenarios where you either want more motion blur, or sometimes you don't want any motion blur, right? Like this is a super easy mistake to fall into that I've actually personally made. Like, so for example, it's easy to just think like, well, oh, I always want motion blur. I always want my shutter speed to be as low as possible. Okay. What if you're flying really fast and you're flying around an actor or an actress? You do not, if you want to park that rig in front of their face and you've got a bunch of motion blur, their face is going to be all fucking blurry and nobody's going to be able to tell who the hell it is. So there are plenty of scenarios where you actually don't want any motion blur. It's super dependent upon the look that you're going for, what you're filming, the amount of available light. It's not an easy thing. This is like one of the many reasons that those of us that are like really deeply ingrained in the world of cinematic FPV basically say like, look, don't do it until you're ready. Like, don't do it until you're more than ready. Because, like, it hurts us. Like, I don't know how to say this without sounding like an asshole, but, like, when that happens, when people go out and they're not ready for it, a lot of times it's the director or the editors or the producer's first time using FPV, because FPV is still relatively new. And when they cheap out, and it's their fault too, right? It's their fault for finding the cheapest possible FPV pilot, right? And the cheapest FPV pilots are usually the least experienced, or they're at least the worst. And they have a bad experience because the FPV pilot doesn't know what the hell they're doing, and they don't expose it correctly, and properly exposing FPV is a pain in the ass. It is arguably the hardest of anything to expose properly, because we've got this camera that moves like super dynamic. It moves fast, it moves slow, and that is really difficult. It is really difficult to manage shutter speed and motion blur in a platform that sometimes moves really fast, sometimes it moves really slow, sometimes it goes into bright daylight, sometimes it drops down into shadows, sometimes it drops down into buildings, sometimes it does all of those things within 5 fucking seconds, right? So it's like super, 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 super difficult to expose FPV footage properly. And when you get into cinematic stuff, everybody talks about, oh, well, you gotta lock the shutter speed down, you gotta lock your ISO down, and like sometimes you shouldn't and can't, and you really have to have a very thorough understanding of photography and or videography to get to understand what the connection between shutter speed, f-stop in some cases, although in most of these platforms you can't adjust the f-stop until you get up into Cinelifters, then you can. ISO, ND filters, and then just lighting in general. And yeah, it's hard. It's very difficult. And even folks like myself who have a 10-plus year background in photography, went to school for TV, radio, film, communications, I still get it wrong. I understand when I get it wrong, and I usually can fix it on site. The worst part is when you get it wrong and you don't realize it until you get home, because then you have to deliver either no footage or shitty footage. And that's where, like, I'm very lucky. Like, I'll catch it on site and I'll have one battery that sucked and is useless, and I just don't send that file to the to the client because they're not going to do anything with it anyway. But yeah, that's a great question, parkour guy. There is no quick answer for that question because it's a whole big thing. It's kind of all tied together. One of the best things that you guys can do that don't have a background in photography or videography, if you want your flight footage to just look better overall, is to learn something about lighting, learn something about photography. Just search YouTube for, like, what is f-stop, what is shutter speed, what is ISO, and spend a couple of hours watching a bunch of different people explain what those things are, what are ND filters. And in the process of doing that, you're going to get a nice basic understanding of those 4 things and how they blend together. And then you can take that general understanding of how cameras work and you can mix it with FPV. And that's super important. And now you can start to understand when you go to your favorite parking lot why every single time you drop down under the trees your footage looks like ass, because either it's underexposed because you locked your shutter, or you have everything on auto and there's this weird moment where it goes dark and then it gets really bright, and then you go out from under the tree again and it goes blown out and then it comes back down. And you'll just understand that stuff and you'll know how to better, it'll teach you how to fly better, and it'll teach you how to set your camera up better. And immediately your flight footage will look significantly better and be way more watchable. It's so easy just to like think like, oh, you know, FPV, cool, it's all about just flying. I just keep flying and flying and flying and flying and flying. And that is true for a couple of years. But eventually, once you get good enough, understanding how cameras work is incredibly important. And it's yeah, so do it. It won't take you that much time. It's not that confusing. It is confusing though, because those 4 things really do blend. And like, as you change the ND filter, it changes everything else. As you change your shutter speed, it affects everything else. And so yeah, keep that in mind. If you're not willing to spend that time, the easy button is to lock your ISO from 100 to 400, and then run an ND16 if you have to wear sunglasses. If like without sunglasses you're like this, super bright day, run an ND8 if you just want to wear sunglasses. If you don't want to wear sunglasses, don't run an ND filter. Leave your shutter speed on auto, and that's the super, super, super easy button. Doing that will make your footage better than 90% of FPV pilots. 90% of FPV pilots can't even get that 30 seconds that I just gave you through their head. Or it's not that they can't get through their head, they just don't care. They're just focused on flying, and they just, yeah, don't care about filmmaking at all. And yeah, it's okay to not care about filmmaking, but if you want anyone to watch your flight footage, then it has to look half decent. So yeah, great question, parkour guy. Blind Pyro says, I'm planning on building a Cinesplorer on 4S, but only want the 2350 kV short 23mm FPV cycle motors are in stock. Should I wait for the 3450 or should I buy the 2340 and run 6S? In my opinion, you should wait for the 3450, but if you put a beefy enough ESC in there, basically like if you put an ESC in there meant for a 5-inch rig, then you can run 6S 2340. You're sacrificing like 8 to 10 extra grams, which is not the end of the world. But yeah, for me, with Cinewhoops, I try to keep them absolutely as light as possible because the weight allows it to track straighter lines, and that allows you to hit gaps much more easily. It also gives you better runtime, and yeah, there's a lot of benefits there. So it's not the end of the world, and you will potentially get a little bit of that efficiency back from being on 6S versus 4S. But yeah, one of the other problems is the 6S batteries tend to be really heavy. If you go down light enough on a 6S battery, the cells are a smaller MAH and they tend to not perform as well as the higher MAH cells. To me, the sweet spot is 4S 850 MAH batteries. An 850 MAH individual cell performs really, really, really well. And then 4S keeps the weight down. If you were to run like a 6S 850, that battery is going to be massively heavy, and you're going to end up with this Cinewhoop that's like 600, 700 grams, and they're just fat bastards, and you try to turn them and they just keep sliding, and that makes shooting gaps really difficult. So if you don't need to build that thing right away, look, do this actually. Message Bob and ask him, or email FPV Cycle. They'll get back to you. Ask them when they think the 3450s will be back in stock, and then that'll make your decision up for you. Your other option is to go to a smaller motor, like a 2004. I run all of my Cinewhoops on either 2004s or 2104s. Bob did a run of 2104s in 3500 kV for us. I don't know if they're still around. Let's see. So yeah, I really, and I've run the 23mm short motor, and it's fine. It's just too much. Yeah, they're all sold out. That sucks. Yeah, so these 3500s Bob made just for us, and yeah, they sold out. That's a shame. So yeah, that's my preferred motor. See if you can, no, you definitely can. So yeah, there are other motors out there. PyroDrone has a great selection of 21mm motors. So here you go. So here's a really good option for you. RC and Power 2105 3600 kV. This is a great option for you. What else do we have? Don't do that. I would actually get this motor. Looks like they also make it in gray and silver. 2105 3600. This is an M5 mount too, which is really cool. That makes changing props much, much, much easier. So yeah, personally, that's what I would do if I were in your shoes. I would get that motor. If you're gonna keep the entire build really lightweight, you can do a 2004, but you're gonna have to really work to keep that rig light. And the problem with 2004s is there aren't many in a high enough kV. You're looking for like a minimum of 3500 kV, really. Yeah, none of these are a high enough kV. So yeah, that's actually what I would do today. I love Bob, but he don't have the right ones in stock. So yeah, I would get this 2105 3600. That's gonna rip. And RC and Power makes great motors. So yeah, there you go. Use my affiliate link if you don't mind, yo. All right. In theory, I'm getting close to being caught up on chat, right? Let me start playing some of the. Come on, chair. Let me start playing some of the flight footage, and I'll answer the rest of these questions while I'm I'll talk over the flight footage and answer the rest of these questions. Hold on. Let me make a quick folder here. New folder 2024-7 you fuck. 2024-7-11 RC drift, and then it's. Is it this? No, that's flying outside. That's flying at that church. We're gonna look at this other footage in a minute, but I just want to get this rolling. Here it is. All right, so boom, boom, boom. So yeah, wow, I flew exactly 15 batteries. Look at that. So let me just grab these. If I play them directly off the memory card, I'll have to turn off the subtitles every single. The subtitles, which is the OSD, and it just drives me mad. So let me just real quickly get that going. Okay, cool. Wow, 9.75 gigs. Jeez. That's a lot. Okay. Where are we at here? Christopher Conwright says, I'll go to Fiverr, thanks. I know you'll see this after my T-Motor thing, but ignore my other questions. No sweat. BID says, what Cinewhoop do you use for your paid jobs? What key pros, cons do you need to consider? I've been using Cinesplores forever. Now there is a Cinesplore 2, which I still have just not found the time to switch mine over into, but I'm pretty sure that this is the way to go. I don't even know if you can get the original Cinesplore. So yeah, Cinesplore 2 is still it is going to be my go-to. I don't really know of any cons per se, but yeah, I mean, for me, Cinewhoops are about keeping the weight under control. Like, if you're flying a Cinewhoop, you're trying to shoot through small stuff, right? You're going slow, and so if you go slow 20 feet in the air with nothing around, it's boring as hell. And so in order to make Cinewhoop footage interesting, you got to shoot gaps, right? And that's what people ask you to do. Like, you know, can you fly through this car window? Can you fly through this kitchen? Can you fly through this regular window? Can you fly in between these two actors, right? It is the way to make Cinewhoop footage interesting. And so make the rig help you with that. Make it as lightweight as possible. So yeah, FPV Cycle has a tendency to build lighter weight stuff because Bob understands the value of lightweight and how much better that flies. And so it's no surprise that the Cinesplores are nice and lightweight. Also, Cinewhoops you don't hammer the hell out of. So building a Cinewhoop that's super durable and super stout doesn't make any sense. Like, do you crash them? For sure. But you don't crash them at 100 miles an hour at a bando 40 times in a row. You crash them once or twice on set from 5 feet up in the air. And so there's no need for them to be super, super, super strong. The Cinesplore is a beautiful mix of strong enough but super lightweight. So yeah, that's the best one that I've found, and I've flown most of the different Cinewhoop options. Unbelievably, most people still fly the Squirt, which was like the very first Cinewhoop. For it being the first one, it's phenomenal. But it was the first one, right? Like, whenever is the first of something the best one years later, right? Yeah, they've made slight improvements to the Squirt, but like, people that have switched from the Squirt to the Cinesplore are like, oh my god, this is ridiculous how much better this is. The Squirt is acceptable, but like it's just old school, and it's just yeah, it's been eclipsed by a lot of other, not a lot actually. There aren't that many Cinewhoops that are great. There's a lot of them that don't make any sense because they're just impossibly durable. But yeah, Cinesplorer is the way to go. Actually, the Avata 2 is the way to go. But we won't talk about that. Christopher Conwright says, if I knew about the Fiverr, I would have just did that weeks ago. LOL. Nice up, brother. You don't have to go through Fiverr if you want the protection that they offer. You're more than welcome to. You can just message me. They take like 14% from me. It's fine. If you feel more comfortable with that, it's totally cool. But yeah, if you just book with me individually and I rip you off, you can come to every single live stream and go, don't book with Ciotti, he'll rip you off. I won't rip you off because you can do that. So yeah. Parkour Guy says, thank you for the Avata recommendation for this commercial work. Absolutely mind-blowing tech in it. Yeah, right now, today, to take a step back, the best Cinewhoop is the one that can safely carry the best camera. Because for cinematic work, it's all about the quality of the camera. Today, the Avata 2 has the best possible camera. The DJI 04 system, as we're calling it, has a better sensor than any GoPro that's available. So right now, today, the Avata 2 is the best Cinewhoop, period. It's $1,000 though. And so if you want to spend a little bit less money, because you're not just building a Cinewhoop, you're also buying a GoPro Hero 12, which is $400, right? To save a little bit of money, you can build a Cinewhoop. And there are some benefits to custom building a Cinewhoop. But the Avata 2 is unreasonably good. It's got the best range, which is also really important. It's got the best runtime, which is really important. And it's got the best camera, which is the most important part of any Cinewhoop. For most of us that are deeply buried in the FPV ecosystem, right, it doesn't necessarily make sense to, unless you've got the money. If you've got the money, hell yeah, it makes sense. But, you know, most of us are trying to save money. And so we can build a Cinewhoop that already runs on whatever video system that we've got, ELRS, Crossfire, whatever it may be. And then we can have the fun of screwing around and trying different motors and trying different ducts and frames and all that jazz. But if you've got the money, today, hands down, the Avata 2 is the way to go, which is absolutely maddening. But once the 04 system comes out, and then once the frame designers have a chance to figure out how the hell to fit that bigger camera inside of custom-built stuff, we will close that gap. But god damn, is the Avata 2 good. I don't know if we'll ever close the runtime gap. We will definitely not only close the gap, but we will be able to build something that flies better. Flight characteristics wise, we own DJI. But the reason that their flight characteristics are not as good is because their runtime is better. They run tiny little motors, and that keeps the all-up weight down, and that lets them do 20 plus minutes of runtime at sub 400 grams. So yeah, there it is. Johnny says, what frame was that you just held up? Johnny said that at 354, it is now 418. I have no idea, Johnny. I apologize. But I've mainly been holding up. Oh, maybe it was this, the BQE Ripsqueak 2. This has been out of stock forever. It's also kind of a fragile frame, so I don't necessarily recommend this. If you want to build a 3-inch or a 3.5-inch rig, the Quadmula Sirens are the way to go if you can find them in stock. There's also the AOS 3.5, which is good. There's not a whole lot of great frames. I really wish that Quadmula would make their products again so that we can buy them. I don't understand. But what do I know? I just work here. Curtis Hayes says, you recommended to someone going with the highest KV motor and motor limit for a 10OX 10 something size motor. So if it comes in 2S or 4S, go with the higher KV and motor limit. Most of the time, yes, but not all the time. If the motor is so high of a KV that you're going to have to motor limit it down below 70%, 65%, then don't do it. But yeah, if I always recommend that you buy motors that are a little bit too high, 10 to 20 to 30, 10 to 25%, 5 to 10 to 20, up to 25% too high of a KV. And then you can move the motor limiting to give you the perfect amount of power. So that's what I'll say. Striker says, for what it's worth, I fly 3.5 inch 1504 3800s, and I'm getting the 1604 as soon as they're back in stock. Fly Insta360 Go 3, all up weight 280 grams, and the motor is spot on. 1504 is a really good motor size. Yeah, I wish that those Xing 3900s were not discontinued. Z Bluga says, could you please show me how much camera sticks out of the Module 6 canopy on your 2S Walksnail build? A lot. More than it looks like is a good idea. But I've got 3 of these damn things going, all hanging the camera out like that, and I have yet to see even a scratch on the top of any of these lenses. I was sure that I was going to absolutely demolish these Walksnail light cameras, but it's just not happening. They're just not getting destroyed. Hey, those files are done copying, so let me just start this, and yeah, you guys can see some Walksnail 65mm RC drift car chasing footage. There we go. All right, cool. Should move OBS over here. Okay, so this is what I'm flying in the next 15 minutes of what you're going to see here. This is a Newbie Drone Cockroach V3 frame. My Batwing camera mount that Timmons helped me design. Walksnail light. True RC ultra short singularity. This rig has Weebleed FPV 0702 40,000 kV motors, biblades, 1210 biblades, and then this has the Beta FPV cross style AIO with BT 2.0. That's it. Nice and simple. Nothing crazy. 0 degree up tilt. Loads of throttle expo. And it's a pretty well dialed rig. I think there's once or twice that I actually land and adjust the throttle expo a little bit. But fairly simple build. Great runtime for what it is. It's a build that you can fly around the house. I don't recommend it. But yeah, if you're going to fly around the house, something like this with the canopy is a better choice. The Batwing hangs the camera out the front, and that's going to beat the hell out of the camera. So yeah, what is happening here? What am I... That's weird. I don't know what's going on. Oh, there was a... Yeah. There was a motor that was not spinning. You know, I wanted to actually look at that. It was motor number 4 that for like no reason was not spinning, and I did not figure out what it was. There was some hair in there, but usually they push right through hair. And then I was kind of thinking, is it maybe the let me show you guys the deal. HappyModel motors in these Newbie Drone Cockroach V3 and Light AF frames. Every once in a while, I think the C-clips on the C-clips on the HappyModel motors are a little bit bigger than the C-clips that that Newbie Drone uses. And so every once in a while, and I think when it happens is after you've cranked the motor screws down a bunch of times. I think I know what it does, because I can see it, is it starts to squish the plastic in. And so like when you first build it, it'll be fine. But then after you've switched the motors a bunch of times, it'll squish the plastic into the little center area where the C-clip rides around. And then all of a sudden you can have, and if there's any contact between that C-clip and the plastic of the frame, it will not spin. These little tiny motors don't have enough power to push through that. And so let me show you that. Let me show you what that looks like super quick. I don't know if this is going to want to focus, but look at the roundness, or the lack thereof, of this hole. Yeah, you could totally see it. You see how the center is now a triangle? That's because I'm cranking those screws down over and over and over again, because I keep swapping motors, because I can't ever just put something in there and settle on it. So this needs to get drilled out, and I'm going to do that super quick, and I'm going to show you the trick to drilling it out so that you don't ruin it. Just kidding. This is just there's really no trick, but this is just my excuse to do it now while I'm thinking about it. Hold on. I'll tell you the right drill bit size though. But there is a little bit of a trick. I'm just going to show you in the little picture-in-picture here. So it is. So here's what you want to do. You want to start with a 1/8 of an inch drill bit. So get an 1/8 of an inch drill bit, and then just pass it down there, and just take. It's going to be a little bit too small, but just run it in there and just take a little bit of material out. You can do it by hand. It's even easier to throw it in a drill. And just put it through there, take the screws out, put it through there, and just push up and around. Get it spinning. See what I'm doing? I'm pushing up and around. That's going to take a little bit of material out. The reason you want to do that is because the next size up, which is 9/64, is just big enough that if it grabs really hard, it will twist that motor base right off and it'll ruin the frame. That's why I don't have two light AF frames. The Newbie Drone kindly sent me two of them, and I was in a hurry, and I used the 9/64 bit, and it grabbed and just broke that motor base right off. Those motor bases are not strong in that twisting direction. They never take any abuse in that direction. So make sure you smooth it out a little bit with the smaller drill bit, and then when you come in here with this, pinch the motor base. Hold the motor base like this, nice and firm, and I guess you could even kind of hand rotate it a little bit at first, but just don't hold it by the outside of the duct. Hold it by the actual motor base, so that if it tries to spin, and just lightly do everything nice and lightly, and then just run it down there real quick, and now you're good to go. And now it'll be good forever. Sometimes I'll give it a little bit of an angle, just to take some of the garbage off. But yeah, that's it. When you get when you get a Cockroach V3 frame or a light AF frame, just do this right out of the box. You won't need to use the 1/8 as long as you're careful with the 9/16. If you've got a frame that you've made that center hole into a triangle, you definitely want to start with the 1/8 inch drill bit. I don't know what it would be in metrics. I don't have a set of metric drill bits. I do want one though. I am going to snag one at some point. I want to find a Milwaukee set though, because I have a bunch of these little Milwaukee bit sets, and they stack up. What do they call it? Pack out. They have this pack out system where they all stack up on each other. So I've got so yeah, there you go. I bet you that's what was happening, because that totally did look like a fucking triangle. And that would make sense, because I was super confused, because that's never happened to this rig before. and that just doesn't make any sense. But this was the first time out with these 40,000 kV motors, and so yeah, the last time, well, when I put these motors on, I must have cranked the screws down a little bit harder, and that made the plastic push out into the C-clips. Alternatively, you can just not be an idiot and over-tighten stuff, but come on, you're a man. You're going to over-tighten shit. What would you like from me, phone? You would like to tell me that it's 4:30, eh? All right. So yeah, now we're good to go. I should do all 4, but I'll just do this one, like a dummy. Eventually it'll bite me in the ass again, and I won't have the drill with me. So that's stupid. But hey, if you're going to be dumb, you better be tough. That song on Jackass about that way back when. If you're going to be dumb, then you better be tough. Derper, 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 derp. All right. Where are we at in Chad here? Parkour guy, talked about that. Johnny, got you. Curtis Hayes, got you. All right. Scrolling. Striker says, that's why I want to start doing stuff for free for experience. If anything, nothing ventured, nothing gained for the people and experience doing FPV, as a career for me. Brandon's Baked Bean says, I don't lock my ISO. I do lock my shutter and white balance, though. Limit how high ISO can go to prevent the sky from blowing out. Yeah, locking the ISO is kind of risky, I guess is a word for it. Your ISO can move between 100 and 400 without introducing any extra noise. What is nice about locking the ISO is that it allows you to completely control the amount of motion blur that you get, basically. So, like, in best case scenario is absolutely to lock the ISO, but with how dynamic we tend to fly these things, it's usually not a great idea. But like, if I'm on a closed set and the lighting is very even everywhere that I'm going to be flying, I will close the ISO down to be locked at 100 or 200 or 400. But yeah, typically I let it move the ISO up and down between 100 and 400. It also depends on what camera system you're using. Certain camera systems will adjust the ISO more smoothly or more quickly than others. So yeah, you got to kind of know the camera. But I typically don't lock it down. I typically just limit it. So yeah. Parkour guy says, after learning FPV, taking a few hours for camera shit doesn't sound bad. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in comparison to the amount of time that you're going to spend learning FPV stuff, it's very easy to learn how a camera works. Striker says, pretty much exactly what I do. Shutter auto and ISO 100 to 400. Forget what I do with white balance, but I'm too poor for NDs, or at least the good ones. NDs are pretty cheap. Camera butter ND filters are fantastic, and you're going to spend all of like maybe 10, 15 bucks. I don't know exactly what they cost, but they're very, very reasonable. And if you're going to be doing anything even remotely cinematic, they're a total necessity. So do it. Scrolling back up. Parkour guy says, what situation would you recommend 30 frames per second cinematic footage for? Pretty much all situations where they ask for 24. 24 frames a second with FPV is really sketchy. You have to fly very slowly if you're going to run 24 frames, and a lot of most directors and producers don't understand FPV in that respect, and they will typically be shooting 24 frames on their Aries and Reds and Sony's CXs. It's not CX. I forget what the Sony medium format camera is, but yeah. If they want, basically 30 frames is, here's the real answer to your question. 30 frames a second is for if you want more motion blur. If your frame rate is 30 frames a second, you can run the 180-degree shutter angle rule and have your shutter speed be 1/60th of a second, 1/60, and that will give you great motion blur in most situations. So if you're not trying to film like a person and or they just want that motion blur, that's when you're going to shoot 30 frames. Also, if you're shooting in low light, it's a real necessity because you can drop all the way down to 1/30th of a second actually. So yeah, I shoot 30 frames a second way more often on cinematic stuff than 60. Yeah, 60 is great if they're going to slow the footage down, but if they're never going to slow the footage down, then it's a waste. So yeah, lots of reasons to shoot 30 frames a second. Striker says, I wanted the FPV cycle 16 millimeter, and they would be good with 4100 kV 4S 3.5 inch, but it's not T-mount, and all the good 3.5 inch props are T-mount, so rip. There are a bunch of 3.5 inch props from GemFan that are convertible that will work on M5. All up weight, with my all up weight, I think 3 inch makes things feel fat. Yeah, it depends, but could be. The 16 millimeter motors, aren't they? I thought they were 3 millimeter motor shaft. I thought they were the wacky 3 mm motor shaft, and then they have the adapter. I'm not sure though. I haven't gotten a set of the 16 mm motors. They're super notchy, which scares the hell out of me. Striker also says Darwin makes those. Okay, right. They're 300 kV, cost $6. Can't beat them guilt free. They don't perform bad. 9 grams, pretty durable. Lasted me 2 months before one broke. Yeah, I remember seeing those not too long ago, and I was like, oh, I should grab a set, but I don't fly 3 inch freestyle enough to do that. And yeah, Darwin is, their prices are so low that it's like, how could this possibly be durable? Stingray Zay says, couldn't you use a lighter antenna on the Walksnail Whoop? Certainly could, but the thought process is that it's a cinematic whoop, and so the extra half a gram or so is maybe worth it. The main reason, though, to be honest, is that I've E6000'd the... Well, I paid $20 for the antenna, and I've E6000'd it down to the board. That's the fact that I have it all nicely glued down to the board is the reason that I haven't tried another antenna, which is a terrible reason. But yeah, it's in this setting, I'm flying down nice and low, so a CP antenna is a really good idea because it's going to just really give you the best possible signal strength. And yeah, it's a cinematic kind of thing. So and also from a latency standpoint, the better quality antenna is potentially going to give me lower latency. So yeah, it's also a less, since the rig is heavier, the percentage of weight loss is a little bit less, right? Like, so that, you know, I actually haven't, sorry about that for anybody wearing headphones. I haven't weighed this rig all up. Oh shit, what did I do that for? There we go. So like with a battery, this thing is 32.78 grams. So 32.78, I could basically save half a gram by going to a lighter antenna. 32.78. What's the percentage weight loss for half a gram? It would be at 100 grams, it would be 0.5%. 30 is basically, so multiply that by 3. So it's basically a 1.5% difference in weight savings. That's not nothing. When the Micro V, I put a Race Day Quads order in almost 2 weeks ago, and it's still not here. I don't know what the hell they're doing. But I've got a bunch of Micro V antennas coming in there, and if there's an extra one, I will almost certainly put it on that rig. I'm not willing to run a straight up garbage ass whip antenna on there, but I've been really impressed by those micro V's, and they're significantly lighter than the whip antennas. So yeah, if I have an extra micro V, I think I wish I had ordered 6, but I think I only ordered 4, so I don't think I'll have an extra one. But yeah, I've got $20 invested in this True RC Singularity CP antenna, so I might actually leave it on there out of stubbornness. Bad says 9/16 is 14.3 millimeters. Thank you for that conversion, my friend. So if you've got a 14 millimeter drill bit, there you go. That's what you can drill out the cockroach frames with. Brandon's Big Bean says, very true. ISO mechanic is a black box of sorts, and the camera can in the camera and can vary from camera to camera. The other thing is ISO will typically adjust more quickly than shutter speed. So locking down the ISO and then leaving your shutter speed on auto is a much worse idea than giving the shutter speed a little bit of a range. More often than not, limiting the ISO from 100 to 400 is your best bet. Curtis Hayes says, why do professional TV guys use 24 frames a second? It seems like it sucks. They're not filming stuff where the action is so fast. First of all, their cameras are static, right? Which helps a ton. And then, yeah, I mean, 24 frames has just sort of been the industry standard forever. And it works really well because it gives you a lot of range to have low shutter speed and be able to with a static camera. It's really hard to get motion blur, and so yeah, the lower frame rates give you the ability to slow your shutter speed down even more. But I think most of them, man, Curtis, that's a big conversation. Actually, there's lots of good. Here's what I'll say. There's lots of good YouTube content about frame rates and the difference that it makes in the feel is pretty wild. There's been a couple of movies made where they've filmed them at 60 frames a second, and man, it's tough to watch sometimes. It's the quickest explanation is that 24 frames, 30 frames are just more cinematic. When I say the word cinematic, what comes to mind is 24 and 30 frames a second. When I say to you action sports and football and hockey, what comes to mind is 60 frames a second. And it has most to do with shutter speed and motion blur, but there's a lot more going on there. And there are some brilliant YouTube videos diving into that stuff. And I do actually recommend that you watch a couple of them because it's fascinating stuff, and the more you learn about that, the more comfortable you'll be making watchable flight footage. Just Mo says, have you gotten a chance to fly Amax motors, and what do you think? I got a set of their 2305 and a halves, and I love them. They're crazy lightweight. They make just enough power for me where I can run them at 100%. And yeah, I was super impressed. But then I started going on family vacations, and the last couple of weeks have been absolute chaos. So I need to get back into that. But yeah, we'll see. Hey, for the record, this is what it looks like when the Walksnail system starts to brown out. You see that? Ready? As soon as I come down from the power loop, right here, 2 throttle blips, that's when it starts to brown out. That's my warning. Get that shit home because it's about to brown out all the way. This is me checking the checking the voltage and realizing I'm still okay to hover for a minute. Striker says, honestly, I might sell my 3.5 inch. Ideally, I have a golden combo of 5 inch and a Cinewhoop. Striker also says, wait, so don't go from race day quads. I've heard the shipping thing from a lot of people. Do I order my Meteor 65 Pro upgrades from Cinewhoop or Weebly or what? Wherever you want. I don't care where you order from. But right now, yeah, race day quad seems to be taking a little bit longer than usual for shipping. If that's important to you, then yeah, don't order from there. Okay, so we've watched a whole bunch of 65 millimeter Cinewhoop Walksnail footage. We're probably towards the last file. No, there's 5 more files, but we're gonna jump out of that, and we are gonna start talking about 75 millimeter rigs, specifically 2S versus 1S. And I'm gonna play the flight footage back to back, and you guys have to guess which one is which. Shouldn't be very hard. But yeah, here's some flight footage from out in front of the house. 2S versus 1S. And see if you can tell the difference. Well, don't look at the OSD. Fucked it all up. Well, now you are. Now you know, especially because I just said that. No, I wasn't playing that. Awesome. All right, great. So, here's something. This is either 1S or 2S. All right. So I played a little bit. There's some fast cruising. Tune's totally fine. From the quick roll that I did. So here you go. Here's some Walksnail 75 millimeter flight footage. Pretty good, right? Nothing wrong with this. All right. So that's maybe 1S, maybe 2S. All right. I come back here because the OSD will spoil the surprise for you. And now, OSD off of there. Nope, 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 nope. Hold on. None. Okay. And so now here's the other. Let's get to some. All right, so here's some fast flying up and down the street. Tune is great. So there you go. Fast flying around. Hopefully I'll start to do some other stuff. I would like to push the camera angle up a little bit on this. One of them's got a little bit more camera angle up tilt than the other. But that is now fixed. Hopefully you didn't just see that. So there you go. I've done a lot of the same movements. What was it? 1S then 2S or 2S then 1S? What do you guys think? There's a little bit of jello in both. I don't know if we're ever going to get the jello out of Cinewhoop Walksnail footage in broad daylight like this. There's not going to be any options for an ND filter because we can't lock down or limit the ISO. So that's kind of it. So here we go. I'm not going to read names. 1S then 2S. 1S then 2S, 1S then 2S, 2S then 1S, 2S then 1S, 1S then 2S, 2S then 1S, 1 then 2, 1 then 2, 1 then 2. Most of you got it right. It was 1S and then it was 2S. How many of you cheated? Because I held the damn things up and you saw that one's on a gray canopy and one's in a white canopy, and you could see that in the bottom of the viewfinder. It was... I'll put it back on. It was 1S and then it was 2S. The reason I did that is that it's pretty goddamn good, right? Like the 1S is pretty goddamn good. You know what I'm saying? So it's not the flight performance is not. Oh, hold on. Let me talk about the setups real quick. Setups are both have the same central stack. Betaflight cross style AIO, Walksnail light, Mobula 6 canopy. That's it. The 1S canopy is very broken. Actually, I've been meaning to take this apart to swap the canopy out. The reason why there was a bunch of extra jiggling and joggling on the 1S is that I've managed to break the shit out of this canopy. I think I broke it at Rampage because I pounded the shit out of this thing there. So yeah, that should be fixed here after I swap this out. But both pretty damn good, right? Not like immediately obvious which one is which when you're watching the flight footage. When you're flying the thing, it is immediately obvious. the 2S rig makes significantly more power and gets significantly more runtime. The runtime on the 1S rig is between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes. The runtime on the 2S setup is between 3 minutes and 3.5 minutes. Massive difference in runtime. The 2S rig is slightly heavier, but only slightly heavier. It's actually ridiculous how close these two are in weight. So that's not like the biggest deal, which is crazy. So long as you run the Cinewhoop 300 mAh 2S batteries. If you're going to do one of these in 2S, this is the battery that you want. It's only available on tinywhoop.com. It is a BT 3.0 300 mAh battery. It is awesome. The other battery option, and I can't believe I've continued to forget to explain this to you, is the Betaflight 450, and it is just way too heavy. Here's the other thing. If you're going to run this battery with this Modula 7 V3 frame and use a 90-degree BT 3.0 lead, this lead is exactly not long enough for this battery in unmodified form. You need to modify this battery a little bit. You need to make an angle here. It's not hard. You just take a little X-Acto knife and you make a little angle here on the battery. You shave away a little bit here. You do it on the other side. And then that battery will slide just far enough into this Modula 7 V3 frame that you can actually plug the damn thing in. But don't do it. These fly like ass. Yes, you get even more runtime. You get like over 4 minutes of runtime, but fuck that. Buy more of the 300 mAh batteries that fly 1,000 times better. I'm blown away by the difference that this battery makes from the extra weight. And I don't know if I've actually weighed the two of them, so let's do that real quick. Cinewhoops are super weight sensitive, my friends. An extra gram here, an extra gram there can wreck the performance of a Cinewhoop. These 450 mAh batteries are 26.9 grams, call it 27 grams. These 300s from Cinewhoops are... What? How the fuck? Hold on. 27 grams versus 15.3. So, yeah, okay. Totally makes sense now. That is wild. 300 mAh, 400. This is not 600 mAh. This is not 550 mAh like the weight would suggest. This is 450 versus 300. Don't buy these batteries. That's ridiculous. Unless you've got something heavier with even bigger motors. Then it'll be able to handle this. But this, as light as I can get it, 75 millimeter Walksnail 2S build, do not buy these batteries. That is way too heavy for only being a 450. I'm not flying these anymore. I'm going to discharge these to 3. If you want these two, I'll build something else where I'll use these. But I'm never going to run these on this frame again. They just fly like ass. These batteries are magic. Here, the weight difference between these two builds is also shockingly small. The 1S build is 43.5 grams with a 450 1S, which gets less than 2 minutes of runtime. The 2S build at 3 minutes of runtime is 49.1 grams. So very, very small difference in all-up weight, considering the difference in power and the difference in runtime. All that being said, the 1S flight footage looked pretty good, didn't it? And you can absolutely feel the difference in weight. And you can just buy a bunch of these batteries and swap them out every 2 minutes. It's not the end of the world. So, like, if going to 2S means you have to, like, spend a whole bunch of extra money, don't. Do the 1S build. If you have a bunch of those 450s already, or whatever. If doing a 1S Walksnail 75mm build is way less expensive than swapping over to 2S with BT 3.0 and all this runaround. Just do it. It's totally fine. If there is no price benefit and you're going in from scratch, 2S, I think it's the way to go. Your motor, you have loads of motor options because you're 2S and you're going to be motor limiting down. Oh, I forgot to finish talking about the setups. Yeah, they both have the same center canopy area. The difference is in the frames motors. This is a Mobula 7 V3 frame. This is the first frame I've run. I don't know if this is my favorite yet. I have 3 more frames to test out. So far, though, this frame is pretty damn good. So, yeah, at the moment, Mobula 7 V3 frame, totally fine option. And then the motors, I don't love either. They're the Flywoo Robo 1002 23,500s, and I have a motor limited down like crazy. In that RDQ order is a set of 1002 19,000 kV motors, which I will have to motor limit down a lot less. They'll probably perform exactly the same, but still. And then I just have like a janky whip antenna on this. The 1S rig is on VCI 0802.6 or 8 080. They're 0803s. 27. Fuck it. I'll look it up. 0802.8 27,000 kV motors. They're both on 1610 biblades. And then this is the Meteor 75 airframe. And this combo is great. But I do prefer this. The 2-minute runtime thing, it's just not for me, and just me having impossible standards as always. It's just not quite enough. It's fine though. Like if 2S was not an option, or if there's no way to build this as light as this was, I would be totally happy with this. But I'm more happy with the 2S setup. So yeah, there you go. The 2S setup doesn't have to be super expensive. Like for your charger, you can just get this stupid little Betaflight checker. It's actually a cell checker and a charger. You need a cell checker anyway, so you're gonna buy this, right? You plug a battery into it, and it acts as a cell checker. You're gonna need a cell checker for BT 3.0, so you might as well snag one of these. Yes, it sucks to just charge one battery at a time, but like, you know, whatever. The Betaflight charger is like another $35 or whatever. I've just been using this thing. It's completely fine. I only have 2 of these batteries anyway, so it is what it is. I don't like session this thing. I don't fly 10 batteries in a row in this thing. Yeah, they both fly shockingly good, as you saw. Here's some more flight footage from the 2S build. But I do prefer the 2S setup. It's just not that much heavier. At the bottoms of dives, it's just a breeze. The 1S setup, like, you got to be a little bit more careful. You got to fly it more like a Cinewhoop. The 2S setup, you can fly it like a quad. You can just hammer that. Like, look at that. You just throw it over stuff, and it's just no big deal. Elias says, do you think a 3D printed lightweight canopy makes sense? Nope. 3D printed canopies are almost always heavier. They're either heavier and the same strength, or they're lighter and more fragile. These Mobula 6, old school Mobula 6 canopies are magic. So this is the 2S rig again. Am I going to take off at any point? There we go. This is me starting to really push it. What else did I want to talk about? Those are the main things. Those are the main things about these two. I think I'm pretty. I think I can pretty. Also, the 2S rig, I had no throttle expo on it. At some point, I landed it and added throttle expo, and that made a big difference in terms of the elevation bouncing, which is good because it has a lot more power. Those are the main things. Those are really the main things. I just wanted to give you guys some more flight footage between the two of them, and like I'd previously been kind of frustrated with the one. Oh, here's some more speaking of the 1S build, the other motor options, the other really good motor option is the Betaflight 1102 22,000 kV. That motor will actually give you more runtime than these VCI motors, but they are heavier. And so now the 1S rig is even closer in weight to the 2S rig. So in my opinion, if you're going to do the 1S build, do it with these 0703 motors, because the whole point of the 1S build is that you're keeping the weight down as low as possible. And yeah, there's lightweight tiny whoops are magic, and like if you want to start flying it inside the house or inside of like a big building, that the less weight is going to help you out. What I do notice though about the 2S build is that the response time and the power is so much better that like it's easier to fly because of that. So like, yes, it's heavier, but I'm almost as confident flying it inside the house because it has there's better flight characteristics. Here you can really see the jello. You might not be able to see the jello through the live stream, but I can most certainly see the jello here. This is on relatively fresh props, relatively fresh motors. When this race day quads package eventually does get here. Also, this thing is props in. Look how straight of a line it tracks. That is falling straight fucking down. I think there is something to the props in on tiny whoops, but you have to have motors that are powerful enough. We've talked about that quite a bit in the past. But yeah, this Modulus 6 canopy, I don't want you to miss this. This Modulus 6 canopy broke in the front here, on the top here, and it also broke on the side here. Again, I think that was from Rotor Riot Rampage. I battered the living shit out of this thing inside of that all metal spot, and I was flying really hard there. Here's the 2S rig in like a really in close scenario where you would think that the heavier weight would kind of punish it. But again, it's the better response time, the more power gives it slightly better flight characteristics. It basically artificially makes the PID tune sort of more locked in because of that decrease in response time. And you can kind of see, like when I start bouncing around here, that's where the weight is not necessarily helping me, but it's relatively competent here inside of literally inside of a tree. So yeah, it flies really, really, really good for what it is. I did this same thing with the 1S rig that I'll show you in a minute. I can kind of feel the difference. I can, on the 2S rig, I can feel that it's just the motors are working better, the quicker response time. It just feels like it's doing this with the air a little bit more. It feels like it's just grabbing onto the air a little bit more, and it is. The propellers are speeding up and slowing down more quickly, and that's it. Every little tiny adjustment, it's able to just kind of keep you held in. This is now 1S footage, and here we go into the tree. But then when there's a scenario where it's sliding sideways, I can feel that it has a little bit of extra weight. And the 1S rig here, it just doesn't want to slide quite as much. And so like the 1S rig will do this like ultra slow speed stuff a little tiny bit better. But that's kind of it. And you can see there, that was a big old dive and it was able to come out of there fine. But I'm conscious of it when I'm flying the 1S rig, and I'm going to get on the throttle a little bit early, and I'm not going to let it get as low to the ground. So yeah, there's a difference for sure. Both of them fly really decent. It's just, I think that the 2S build, this is when I realized that the canopy was really broken, because I'm not able to level the horizon and sit straight. The camera was literally sitting a little bit sideways in there. So yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with either. I think you guys are going to dig either one. But for me, I'm going to fly the 2S build more, because of the extra runtime, and because of the extra power. I'm really looking forward to getting these 1002 19,000s on here and putting a fresh set of props and seeing what happens with the jello. Both of these rigs have jello in bright sunshine. If you fly later in the evening when it's not so bright out, the ISO will come down, the shutter speed will slow down, and the ISO will go up, the shutter speed will come down, and you will have a lot less jello to deal with. See that little hit of prop wash there? That has been almost impossible to get rid of on the 1S build. On the 2S build, as I've moved the tune up more and more and more, it has almost completely gone away. But with any of these Walksnail builds, you are going to be sacrificing flight performance because you're adding 6 extra grams of dead weight. Let me see where the tune is at on the 1S rig. I just plugged it in. PUC says, best analog ELRS 2-inch build. There's no such thing as best. There's only different. And you've given me pretty much no information to go off of, so there's just no answer to that. PUC, if you ask that question to someone and they give you an answer, don't listen to them. They don't care about giving you a good answer. They just want the satisfaction of giving you an answer. That question has no information, and so it is impossible to give a proper answer to that. I don't know if you want a toothpick. I don't know if you want a Cinelifter. I don't know if you want to fly fast, fly slow. I don't know if it's freestyle, cinematic. So for example, I offer a build planning service on my Fiverr. $40 for a half an hour session, $60 for an hour session. The first 15 plus minutes of that Skype call, Zoom call, whatever, all I do is ask you questions. The answers to those questions are the only way that I can recommend a build for you that's going to make any sense. Yeah, look how hard I have the PID tune pushed already. Although I do have the master multiplier turned down a little bit. That's interesting. Let's bring that back up. I'm going to bring it all the way back up to 1.0. Hopefully, next time I fly it, it doesn't just fly to the moon. But yeah, I don't know why I had that master multiplier turned down. I might have had like an angry set of props on there or something. That'd be my guess. But yeah, cool. Maybe this will fly a little bit better next time I'm ripping it. And so yeah, there's just a ton of info that is needed to answer a question like that, because why do we custom build? What's the point of custom building? Why not just buy bind and flies? We custom build because we want to build something that's perfect for each one of us. And so when you ask that question with no info, the person that's going to answer that question is someone that doesn't understand this. They don't understand, or they just don't care, right? And so, yeah, anybody that just gives you an answer to that, typically what they're doing is they're telling you what their favorite ELRS analog 2-inch build is. They're a different person than you. And so they fly in different spots. They like different pilots. They have a different flight style. They're carrying a different payload. They want a different amount of runtime. They have higher standards than you. They have lower standards than you, right? And so if you're going to custom build, you should be building something that's specifically good for you. If not, fuck it, buy a bind and fly. They're cheaper. It's literally cheaper to buy most bind and flies than to buy all the parts, and you're going to save yourself 6 to 8 hours of build time. So yeah, pick one side or the other, and find somebody that's willing to actually answer those questions for you, or ask the right questions to you to figure out what that would be. And then you can build something that actually works well. Your other option, the option that most of us have gone down, myself, right? I started flying 8 years ago. There was no one that was willing to have a phone call or a Skype call with me and ask me all of those right questions and figure out what the right setup, the right motors, the right props, the right frame, the right electronics, the right battery. It didn't exist. most people don't realize that I'm willing to do that. And then there's also people that know that I'm willing to do it, but they don't think that the $40 or $60 is worth it. Here's the funny thing, though. If I walk you through that and I give you all of the right parts, you will buy at least one. You will not buy at least one thing that costs $40 or $60, and it'll save you that money. So usually, people that do the build planning session with me save themselves more than what they pay me to do the session, and they end up with something that works better. But it is fun to test different stuff. It costs a lot more money, but it is fun. So if you like testing stuff, if you don't want to get it perfect on the first shot, because you just won't, right? Like, what are the odds that you can choose out of 20 different motors the exact right ones? Out of 40 different propellers, the exact right ones. Out of 10 different frames, the exact right run. Out of 10 different electronic setups, the exact right one, right? It's not going to happen. You're not going to pick all the right stuff. But some people like that testing and trying things. And so if you have the budget for it, that's fun. And that's how I did it, right? I've tested tens of thousands of dollars of gear over the last 10 years to figure out which ones catch on fire, which ones have shitty gyros, which ones are perfect. None of them are perfect, but as close to perfect as we can get. And so, yeah, I wish I wish there was a setup that was perfect for everybody, but there just isn't, right? Curtis A says, did you notice more low-end, high-end, or just more power in general in 2S? Just more power in general. Yeah. 2S is double the voltage, which is massive, right? When we went from 4S to 6S on 5-inch rigs, that was only 50% more voltage, and the difference is immediately noticeable. So from 1S to 2S, it's double the increase than we experience with 4S to 6S. And so, yeah, it's noticeable everywhere. The 2S rig flies better, but it's heavier, and it's always going to be heavier. It's not that much heavier, though, and that's really where we end up with a setup where it's like, yeah, I'm willing to deal with the extra weight. Cinewhoops, you want to be a weight Nazi, like for real. But in this case, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it to have that little bit of extra weight because a lot of things, the efficiency is better, the flight characteristics are better. But what I want you guys to understand is that the 1S rig flies really decent. And other than the 2-minute run times, it's shockingly good. And I'd previously been like a little bit down on it, like, oh, I'm really unhappy with this. And now that I've flown this a bunch more and I've back-to-back them a bunch, I'm realizing how close they are actually together, and that there's nothing wrong with the 1S setup. But money no object, yeah. 2S 75mm Walksnail, done. Arc UK says, I made a 2S analog version of that just for fun. It's disgusting power to weight, LOL. Yeah, analog, you don't have that extra 6 grams. And on 1S, you can get a setup like, let go! Like the Jungle Gym Basher that has plenty of power, plenty of flight characteristics. To put 2S onto this would be pretty insane. Very fun, but from a flying close to stuff and getting like really good flight footage, it would probably be a little bit too much of a power to weight ratio. Very fun though. Elias says, can you show the throttle expo? I tried it once on a 5-inch and hated it and couldn't fly at all. I can't just show you throttle expo, Elias, and have it benefit you in any way, shape, or form. If you want to use throttle expo, if you want to get good, you have to put the time in, as with most things in life. But I have significantly reduced the amount of time that you're going to have to put in. You're going to go to my channel. You're going to click on the little magnifying glass so that you search only on my channel. And you're going to search for Throttle Expo. And when you do that, this Midpoint Monday live stream is going to come up. You're going to come into this live stream, And you're going to use the timestamps that Apache Smoke Wounds and Sniper very kindly made for us here. And I got to fix this one. And there's going to be a timestamp here. Here it is. Here it is. An hour and a half in. An hour and 30 minutes. How to dialing in throttle expo and why you should put it there. And you're gonna have to watch a half an hour. You're gonna have to watch from an hour and 31 beyond an hour and 50. You might have to watch 40 minutes, it looks like. But in this 40 minutes, you're going to learn what throttle expo does, how to set it, why it matters. Without that knowledge, you will continue to have the exact same experience that you did, where you will hate throttle expo. You don't always want to use throttle expo. 5-inch rigs are an example where you don't want to use much, if any. It will benefit you to use a little bit. There are other platforms like Cinewhoops and Tinywhoops where using a lot of throttle expo is night and day. And it will take you from having a rig that's not fun at all to fly to a rig that replaces every single other thing that you've got. And you will just fly Tinywhoops inside for thousands and thousands of batteries. It is super important, and if you want to get good, sometimes you have to put the time in. And this is a perfect example of that. So what do you want? Do you want to just continue ripping balls and just having fun and ignoring some things that are a little bit more difficult? There's nothing wrong with that. Or do you want to properly get good and dive into it? There's no wrong answers either way. But if you want to use throttle expo, you have to learn how it works. You have to understand how it works. Just turning it on is going to make the situation worse, which is what you experienced there. If you take a little bit of time to learn about it, you can use it properly, and it can be something that makes you a much better pilot and makes your flight footage much more watchable. And that's what I think you should do. But if you don't do that, that's okay. There's nothing saying that you need to get to that point, right? If FPV is about having fun for you, then you don't have to get good. Just have fun, right? Like, getting good without an audience, why bother? Just continue to have fun. For some people, getting good is the fun. Me. But yeah, there you go. Gusto says, on drone hangar night. Yes, I am. I forgot to talk about that earlier. The boys over at Drone Hangar, Shelby Vole and, god damn it, I forget the other's name. They're having me on their live stream tonight, so that should be fun. 8 o'clock. Yeah, 8 o'clock Eastern time. I'll be on there. They do a more... their live stream format is more like everybody else, where it's like just kind of hanging out and having a good time. So yeah, there probably won't be much technical info or deep dives or really it'll be completely opposite of these live streams. You know what I mean? So if you like watching live streams other than mine and Joshua's, then you'll love it tonight. But if you're looking for anything like what we do or like what Joshua does, it's not going to be that. Fair warning. It's hangout. It's good times. It's doing drugs and just having fun. And so yeah, that's. Those live streams are so much fun to put on in the background when I'm doing work and not trying to learn. So that's what's to expect. They're nuts, man. They have. You'll see. I'm not gonna spoil the surprise. They do all kinds of wacky stuff. I don't have a link, but just search YouTube for Shelby Vole, and I'm sure you'll find it. Or just the name of the live stream, Drone Hangar. Drone Hangar. There you go. It's on Shelby's channel though. So yeah, Shelby Vole. There's a link in the chat for you. And I guess it's this one here. Yeah. Oh no, I think they changed the wrong. They changed the thumbnail. This is last week. I think they got the wrong thumb. Oh, no. They do have the right thumbnail. Oh, I thought that was a picture of me in the bottom with the thing. Looks just like me. Yeah, 8 o'clock tonight. Should be fun. What else? Just Mo says, I notice when I cut the throttle, my quads, almost all of them, start shaking left to right on the y-axis. What's the y-axis? You know what might be the issue? That is not enough for me to go off of, brother. I apologize. But with that amount of information, the only thing that I can say is that anti-gravity might be the fix. But yeah, man, that could be so many different things. That, yeah, it could be your power system doesn't have enough to kind of handle the issue. Could be that your PID tune is too soft. There's so many things that could be. Try turning up your anti-gravity. Try increasing your PID gains. Master multiplier is the easy button to do that, and see if that helps. Striker says, so what's the situation with the M6 2024 quality control? Is the version 2 board reliable? Don't know. Hasn't been out long enough yet. Between Floors 2 says, good day. In your experience, if you plug a battery in 4S backwards, blow up the capacitor, fairly new, how likely I would only be to put a new capacitor? Oh, I have no idea, man. Take the capacitor out of there, cut the capacitor off, and plug the battery back in, and you'll get your answer. Notice we got that. Elias says, didn't put a lot of effort into the Throttle Expo, but I've oriented myself on Chris Rosser's video about tuning rates. Rates and Throttle Expo are two completely different things. A video about regular rates will not help you out at all when it comes to Throttle Expo. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you still got to spend a half an hour to 40 minutes watching me if you want to be able to figure out Throttle Expo, because it's a totally different beast. Just Mo says, then yaw left and right when I got the throttle when I'm leveled out. Yeah, I don't know, Just Mo. I apologize, man. We would probably need to do maybe, yeah, a video of it would certainly help. To get some DVR of it and put it on the Discord, and people will jump in. If we can't figure it out there, you can message me direct. Steve Jobs says, where do I find your video on Throttle Expo? Just search my channel for Throttle Expo. Like 3 minutes ago, I showed you how to do it on the live stream, how to find it. So yeah, just rewind back, or if you know how to search people's specific channels, just search my channel for Throttle Expo. It'll be right there for you. There you go, friends. It's 5:22. Thanks for hanging. Great questions today, as always. CiottiFPV.com to support this. I'm completely crowdfunded. Without you guys, I cannot do this. So head on over there. Discord helps me out the most, and you will get the most benefit from it. There's also a ton of affiliate links. Replace all your bookmarks with my affiliate links, and then you don't have to think about remembering to hit them. If you don't use my affiliate links, use somebody's, because it's free money for us, and the more money we have, the more shit we can test, and the less money you will waste. It is a cyclical little system we got going on here, my friends. Be good. I'll see you maybe tonight at 8 on Shelby's channel. Tomorrow night at 10 o'clock for sure. No Joshua tomorrow night. So, yeah, see you at 10. Be good, friends. Just Mo says, will you do the Spill the Tea podcast with Lamone? Yeah. If somebody invites me to be on their thing, I will not say no unless I have a gig planned or one of my own streams or something like that. I'm not, fancy enough to be able to really say no to anything. But yeah, typically nobody really asks me to be on their shit because, I don't know, I'm a loudmouth radical left winger, I guess. I don't know, but it is what it is. What it actually is most people don't know about me, right? Like, you guys all know about me. But yeah, I'm pretty small potatoes in the FPV world, which is fine. I like it that way. I do not want to be a super popular person. Lots of problems come with that, right? If you meet 100 people, one of those people is a monster, right? So that's like 1%. this channel is about to be at 10,000 subscribers. 1% of 10,000 is a lot of monsters. I don't want more monsters. So I'm perfectly happy with the amount of people that hang out, and you guys in chat are, as always, the best. So if you keep supporting me, we can keep it like this forever, and it won't get too insane. Be good, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. I am not ready. Here's the last... Oh, no, I forgot to play this flight footage. Here's me flying the 2S rig at this while I was waiting for Azalea to get out of her guitar lesson. I'm going to let this play for a little while. This will be a long outro. Here you guys go. Be good, friends. I love you. Bye.